All right, everybody. So basically, today we're kind of going to start with a topic that I think we ended a little bit with last time with like the question about technology and AI, but this time we're going to talk about a little bit more specifically. So we're going to talk about technological expansion, its purpose, and philosophy. So this is it's just meant to be just an overall general topic about technology and how it's impacted people's lives and what do we think it's going to happen over the next 100 years. So like we're just going to start with like a general question for now. So like where do you guys think, let's say for the next 50 to 100 years, where technological innovation is going to develop? Like in what areas?
Oh, have you guys heard of the concept of the technological singularity?
Yes.
No.
People are saying that's going to happen like next century. Oh, so it's basically, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, you probably know more about this than I do, but it's like when AI overtakes human intelligence, and then there's like superhuman intelligence, but in AI.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah. So like when AI is smarter than I'm pretty sure it's smart when it's become smarter than all human beings on Earth. Yes, yeah, so like super intelligence. You're on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Then
People
we,
have been
then we
saying
go
that
real
at
crazy.
the rate of like development, we might reach there within this next century.
But here's the thing, I think we have to look at kind of ethics too, right? Like what?
I mean, I feel like for AI, we're gonna have you guys ever read I, Robot or something? I forgot that. I think that's the book.
I've heard of the movie, the one that Steven Spielberg directed, I think.
So basically, they for the AI, they set like some ground rules for as ethics, right? So one of the rules was that you may never harm a human being, right? But the one of the AI found like a loophole to that whole ethical rule, and like started whatchamacallit it. It started going around and hurting human beings, and it was the central artificial intelligence that was first created that manages all of the robots, you know, and basically it just like it kind of broke the rules that was set for it because it just got that smart. It got smart enough to do so.
And here's the thing, that's just one part of it. If we're gonna have robots, we're gonna probably use them for the things that we would probably not do by ourselves, like go into dangerous places or do something that we would
send
not
them to wars.
Send them to wars,
send
them, make them slaves, make them work for us.
Sites, send them to space.
There's so many examples, but the point is, if we're giving consciousness to robots, is it even ethical? Because when we give consciousness to robots, that means they have their own feelings. Even though they're electrical, the robot's still able to understand that it exists.
Right, but that's the question. Do they? Because we have to be certain. Like then people ask, what is really consciousness, right?
Yeah.
So what
my point is that consciousness? But my point is
consciousness actually achievable.
The argument is that one time. No, my point, but that's not the point. The point is that even though they don't have consciousness, many people are arguing that in order for them to be in the society, hypothetically, if they do get to that level, would we even do that? Would we even do that to our society? Would we create a system that is higher than us? And we'll go extinct and robots will take over us and they'll do, there'll be some kind of revolution of robots versus humans where there's like, different motives for each side. So what I get at is that the morality,
guys, this reminds me of a video game.
You have to be very careful in creating life because, there are many religious people say that life is only created by God. But here we're talking about creating artificial life, which is huge. And we have to be careful about things that we do because if we give life to something that is going to harm others and get harmed in its process, then that's not right.
Right, and I think what's really interesting is that I just remembered a video that was made by Kurzgesagt that was called "What's the Origin of Consciousness?" And what they went through in the video, just breaking it down really easily, is that they were asking the question, how do unaware things become aware? So how do, for example, single cellular organisms develop the complexity to eventually come to us, and which we classify ourselves with the ability to be conscious, right? So what they concluded, very simply through the video, is that consciousness came out of a necessity for, as organisms developed, right? You first had single-celled organisms, developed in a more complex animals that, let's say, eventually didn't have any sensory functions. Then they developed eyes to be able to see and hunt predators. Eventually they developed, other types of tools that they would be able to use to better survive, which eventually those tools together culminated into us, considering,
Well, robots can't do any of the jobs that we're trying to get them to do without consciousness. They can't drive, they can't go, so they have to have consciousness. There's no way a robot's going to take over our jobs and our economy and our industry if it does not have consciousness, or else it'll just be
I don't know. I mean, sorry, one sec. I don't know about that necessarily, because, for example, you have in the auto industry, if you look back 50, 70 years ago, where the majority of cars, while being produced on a production line, were produced by human beings. Now, when you go to any motor plant, they're all being produced by a robot who does the same job over and over again. I don't think anybody would argue that those robots have consciousness. I believe that once, like Ashvin said, once we get to a technological point, robots and systems that we create will have the power and the, regardless of whether they imitate the human brain or through some way of creating connections, will obtain consciousness. I don't think robots now have consciousness.
They definitely don't have it now.
But who cares? Who cares if they ever get consciousness? All that we care is if a computer can pass a Turing test and we can't tell if it's human or computer, then the question of whether it has consciousness is, it doesn't pertain to anything relevant. We ourselves can't tell.
Wouldn't it pertain to an ethical element? Wouldn't it pertain to ethics? Because if you could argue, for example, that we as human beings, if we argue that we are the only ones who have consciousness among all the other plant life and other organisms on Earth, wouldn't it thus be our responsibility, if we create out of our will a being that has consciousness, for us not to, and to treat it with the same level of respect or a similar level of respect that we would treat another human being? Because wouldn't not doing so be, let's say we kill it or we turn it off, and its consciousness as we know it doesn't exist anymore. Is the person now who did that, are they responsible for murder? Those are,
the question is, does it have consciousness or not? But I'm saying, if you can't even tell that you're not talking to a human, then whether the computer has consciousness or not is besides the point. You have to treat it like an actual human at that point.
In what context? What do you think? I'm curious what you think. In what context do we treat it as similarly to human?
Well, if it passes a Turing test.
But that's the thing, right? Because robots. Yeah, right. But here's the thing: robots have already passed the original Turing test. Robots have successfully passed that already. But now scientists have already created more complicated Turing tests, from what I know of, I could be wrong on this. From what I know of, have not passed those more complicated versions yet.
And the solution that we get at is that the more and more complex these problems and these jobs become, the more and more the robots need not only the data that pertains to that job, but also emotion. Because clearly one of the most important concepts in the human society is emotion. If robots are able to somehow connect with humans, then they can do their jobs so much better. Their jobs will be so much better because
it'll just make them more inefficient.
What?
If they're able to connect,
emotions.
Wait. In what way? Yeah, you just explain in what way.
Emotions will make robots much more inefficient, and then it'll be just the same thing over again for robots as well. Because the reason why humans are inefficient as we are is because of our emotions. Satvik, you're one of the most You're one of the you argue about this a lot, basically. You're the one of the strongest supporters of this. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's a different context.
Emotions.
Right now, what I'm talking about.
Well, let him explain.
Forget about that. Okay. So why I'm talking about emotions is because suppose you have a shopkeeper. Okay, so the shopkeeper understands the emotional side of humans, right? So if you replace him with a robot, clearly the robot has to not just have algorithms to explain to the customer what what the products are, but he also has to have the empathy, or I don't know,
No,
the
he doesn't. He's just checking out
psychological, the
items.
emotional side. No, but what if but the customer is expecting something more, a human side.
No, he's not.
When the customer goes,
At the end of the day, the customer's not going to
how,
remember the cashier.
but the product that he buys, he needs like information, not just information about it, but like
No,
just
do
needs
you
the
go up
But
to
the
human
your
side of
cashier's
cashier?
it.
not gonna know
Do
anything
you
about the
do you
product.
go do you go up to your cashier and be like, "Hey, can you tell me about the nutrition facts of
I mean,
hot
Maybe a waiter.
Cheetos?"
You're talking about a waiter, Sasvik. You're not talking about a shopkeeper.
yeah, whatever the
Like,
example is,
okay,
my point
as
is
of right
that
now, that we already have self-checkouts. Do we need emotional self-checkout centers? No, we just check ourselves
that was a
out.
bad
Boom,
example.
done.
Listen.
Yeah.
Hey, okay. I think the perspective. I think what Satvik is saying about emotion. I think I would agree with Satvik for a different reason. I don't think if no, this is. I think if a robot was able to achieve the complexity and to have for the first time self-awareness, and would be, I don't think emotion would make it inefficient, because if we're going to talk about efficiency in terms of, let's say, the economy. For example, I would argue the inefficiency comes from the hierarchical structure of how firms are created, for example, or different elements of how the economy works. I wouldn't say it's the emotional aspect.
Right, but why do people like lose money in the stock market? It's because their emotion
Because
get
they
ahead of
use,
them.
yeah, because they get excited. Exciting is being
It's like
exciting is an
gambling.
emotion.
but,
They get
but then you're
happy.
losing
They get elated.
a big part of human
Right, but
connection in
that's
there.
the point, right? Then
Yeah,
what
but
makes
that's
it
not
a
the
human?
point.
Yeah. But then
The
again,
point,
I think this goes down to then whether if a robot were to become self-aware, would emotion, if at all, would play a role? Like, would it have emotion or not? I think this is where we're trying to I think this is where there's a key
no,
disagreement.
emotion should not have a role when it comes to creating AI.
But then there's no R2D2.
Would you not
R2D.
think emotion would come out naturally from a being like that? I'm curious.
Yeah, I would say with consciousness, emotion comes out very
At some
easily
point,
because you
maybe,
have,
like, for example, Chappie.
once you have self-awareness,
What's that?
automatically
Yeah,
you
because
understand.
remember, guys, a lot of, now again, this could be up to human bias if 50 years from now people look back at this. But many films or novels, or in many contexts, when people talk about AI that is self-intelligent and creates consciousness for itself, it slowly adapts and understands, let's say, why humans have emotions, and then, like Jay said, for the example with Chappie, begins to emulate or even create or display the hallmarks of emotion,
I actually
whether
thought
out of
Chappie was
necessity
going to
or
have
by
a
nature.
second movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought it was going to have one because it ended off with a cliffhanger, but it never did, so that's sad. But anyways, continuing on.
The natural cycle will definitely be disturbed. I mean, we're talking like whatever you
I mean, of
say.
course it will. Of
I
course it's
believe
gonna
that
be disturbed.
there's a higher realm of natural indicament, or rather authority. Whether you call it God, whether you call it the spirit, whatever you call it, that doesn't matter. But there's a natural order, and humans, I strictly don't think that they can disturb this natural order. And even though if they try to create robots, things that are unable to die, and also there's a problem with
I mean,
reproduction
of
there. But
course,
anyways,
no, wait. Robots will technically be able to die, because there can be mechanical failures. Their engines aren't going to be immortal, of course. Their
yeah, but we're
motors are
not
going to
talking about
rust.
a natural life and death scenario, right? We're talking about creatures that, it's in itself, they're coming from, this is no living being has done this before to create another living being. And so I think it just breaks the
I
natural.
mean, technically, we do it all the time.
I'm talking about
I
like,
never officially,
You're
yeah.
assuming there's like a natural order, but the fact, like the thing we are having trouble replicating in artificial intelligence is the
It's the
chaos.
consciousness.
Well,
Yes, the
and
chaos.
what is consciousness? It's just chaos. Like
No,
you
actually,
can't
when it
break it
comes
down
down
that
to it,
easily.
Well,
when
wait,
it
that's
comes
the
down
thing.
to
What
it,
is?
consciousness is just a more complex form of programming. Like, who was it who was talking about like, oh, Alan, right? I think it was you, Alan, that was talking about how like consciousness was it became a necessity, and that's why it came to be, right? Is that what
Yeah,
you
yeah, it was
said?
Kurzgesagt theory that over the
Okay,
course of time it was a
so
necessity to survive. Yeah.
basically, God was just adding sensors to us, but those sensors needed programming, right? So then he added the programming, and that programming at some point became very complex that it started working by itself and it became self-sufficient. Thus, consciousness.
Right, but
But here's the
I would be
thing.
wary of calling it just programming because I remember I think there you know when
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I'm
let's
saying
say
that it's a very complex form of complex programming because the
To be
consciousness
machine
there's of
learning,
course there's it's like it's not machinery
machine learning.
No, but using
and
the
it's much
word
more natural.
programming
It's
implies
smooth.
that it has some order or it has some logic behind it.
I think the
No,
problem with
what
that
I
when
was
we were
gonna say is
discussing
that
is
there's a
all the
lot of
terms that we
glitches behind the consciousness is basically like a program that was built and it has a crap load of glitches.
So it's chaos. It's a chaotic system, and the
Yeah,
problem that
it's a
we face
program
right
that
now
it's
is we
basically a failed program.
we don't know how to replicate these chaotic systems.
Exactly. We know what we know is how to make a perfect program. We cannot replicate the glitches of the consciousness. That's why we will never be able to achieve real,
Haven't we already
true
said that you
consciousness.
can't gain true
Right, but guys,
perfection?
here's I think the problem with what we're discussing right now is when we have this back and forth about what can be replicated, what can't be in chaos systems, is that the terms that we're using right now, for example, program or consciousness, can be interpreted a varying number of ways. Because what I stated
Yes.
in the Kurzgesagt video, for example, what their theory is that it came out of a necessity for life forms to eventually become dominant or to survive in nature, right? But consciousness simply means of a state of being aware of yourself. So being
Awareness.
able to be aware of your surroundings and to having an external existence. So there's a
I
lot
would
of
say
like
experience, the ability to experience.
there's a massive gray area. So I think the terminology is getting mixed up when we talk about certain things because they have such varied meanings. I just think what's more pertinent and more less reductive to talk about is, let's say, for me, is one of the dangers of AI that poses to us as a human race is in the example that if super intelligent AI forms, for example, let's just say for argument's sake, its own consciousness,
The
and
Skynet.
is intelligent enough to act as in the same way that we act towards ants. Like, do we hate ants whenever we step on an anthill? Not really.
No.
We don't have any massive hatred for ants. We just step on them because we really don't care. Like we don't just hate ants. We just, if we need
We
to make a
just feel
street,
like
we
it.
pour some concrete over them. Like whatever. Like they're just we disregard them. In the same way, what's a worrying thing about AI is that it could look at us in the same way because almost like what Sathik said, it could have some higher form of understanding or intelligence. And no matter how hard we try, due to our natural limitations, we could never fully master without having, to edit either our DNA or adding maybe some computers into our skulls or something. We don't naturally have the ability to do so. And so it'll
Elon
naturally
Musk is working on that.
right, but the basically the point being is that its expectations and its goals will diverge from our goals because it will necessarily have a different understanding of the material world, which is a problem that scientists are trying to, like Elon Musk or Stephen Hawking wrote letters talking about.
So should we just stop right now? Should we just stop all the research right now? Like at what point is technology gone too far?
Well, I
Is there
think it
ever a
would be
It's a
point?
business
impossible.
at this
It'd be
point, dude. It's a
impossible to
business at
start.
this point.
It's also
We can't stop
yeah.
it.
Yeah. And even if we could, even if, let's say, most governments in the world said, okay, we got to stop this, there is, and I think, Satvik, you're right, there is too much investment capital to be made by either, one nation. Let's say everybody agrees to stop, but let's say one nation like China says, we're going to keep going because, we can. And
So
they
does the
develop
capitalistic model mean that technological advancement can never stop?
Yep.
not even necessarily
sure.
never. Yeah, I think because in the sense that capitalism as an economic system requires infinite growth, which is one of the problems that it has with climate change. It requires nonstop growth, which is why, when we talk about climate change, right, it's a problem to introduce regulations because you have all of these centralized clusters of capital that will try to prevent any sort of regulation on top of them because it would
Okay,
be
guys,
non-profit.
I have an important question.
So like, yeah.
I have an important question. I know Salvik watches anime. Do any of your other guys watch anime?
I only watched one anime,
I
Sword
watched a
Art
bit.
Online. I've watched one.
Okay. So have any of you watched Gurren Lagann?
No.
Okay. So it's a very interesting anime. It's at first the first season is you can skip it, to be honest, but it's where most of the action happens. The second season, towards the end, is where like the true plot of the anime starts coming out. And the true plot of the anime is it focuses on the aspect of evolution and chaos, and how so one of the main things throughout the entire anime is a drill, okay? And it represents basically all of humanity. This drill represents all of humanity. Why? A drill is a spiral. And if you keep spinning the spiral, it's gonna keep going. The drill it's never gonna stop, you know? And when you think about it, humanity, it's never gonna stop evolving. And innovation is never going to stop, you know? No matter what. Even if you leave it alone, even if all of humanity leaves, like you guys said, even if all of humanity decides, okay, we're all going to stop AI, there's going to be at least one person that will continue doing research on AI, and it's going to take that one person. And Gurren Lagann focuses on that aspect. So basically, it's like about a revolution led by humanity, and it starts with this one kid who's like 12 years old, and by the end of the anime, they've reignited humanity, basically, you know. And it started with one 12-year-old kid. So if you take that into aspect, if you take that framework and take it into AI as well, one person can just make the Skynet, basically. I don't know why I keep saying Skynet, but it's my best example of AI run rampant. But basically, yeah, AI can't be stopped. Even if we wanted to, it won't be stopped. It'll
But
keep evolving.
what if AI like helps us? Because we're all thinking like AI is going to.
AI will help us. Of course it will.
What if we replace the
It's
government
gonna
with
help
AI?
us go.
Like
It'll make
scheduling
everything
problems.
much more efficient.
No, that's technocracy. I'm not a fan of that. That's
I don't think
technocratic stuff. That's not going to help.
And morality should not be given in the hands of a computerized system. It will be based on law and order.
Why? It should be given to the hands of people who are corrupt and.
No, spontaneous.
No. I think
spontaneous judgment is better. Spontaneous judgment is better because
what I feel like is that the government should not be in robotic hands. However, law enforcement can be in robotic hands. I'm not saying it must be. I said it can be. Law enforcement can be in the hands of robots. However, when it comes to governments, it should be led by humans, because if it's led by robots, then humans will not have they won't feel the need to follow the rules that's made by a robot, and they will feel much more spited by the fact that, oh, this thing that I made is the thing that's telling me what to do. I'm not gonna let my creation tell me what to do. You know, you're gonna feel much more spited rather than. Yeah, it's because a robot is not going to be your equal. Thus, you won't want to listen to it. You're going to have the tendency to want to break its rules.
True, and it's not just that, it's the fact that, remember, with the faith, remember how we even talked about this in history class, like why authoritarian regime, not saying that authoritarian regime will happen, just that when authoritarian regimes are created, they're because people mistrust the democracy. So if people start looking, this is just a flat out problem if AI were to control government procedures, that people would thus say, well, is this a democracy anymore? Do I have any input? Or does the AI now control what happens with the government's policies or whatever? In which case, I also have an issue with that as well, regardless of democratic input. It's that if, let's say, you put an AI in charge of a business or in charge of a government, an AI is going to look for, again, what it thinks are the things that need to be invested in or its own interests. And then who sets the guidelines? Whoever creates or programs that AI will thus set the parameters for what the AI is interested in doing.
That is true. That concept of a feedback loop in an AI's training, like the whole AI, the effectiveness of it is based totally on the data you train it on. And if your data is bad, then, I mean, that part of the system is probably the weakest link.
And also, we're talking about data, and natural life doesn't always correspond to data. There are many absurdities in law cases and many cases where previous data does not help at all. So you have to use human just your own instincts, perhaps, or your sense of morality or justice.
See, it's because we can't model the chaos of like economic systems with trillions of variables. They're just chaotic systems. We
Not just
don't know how to
economic
model.
systems,
I mean,
human
to some
nature.
extent,
I think
Yeah,
it's
everything.
human nature to be just chaotic. That's just what we are. Humans are so complicated that we can't create a. Here's the thing: if we create robots or if we have AI controlling law and enforcement, we are giving a concrete law and order. We're giving it data that says this is right and this is not. If this person does this thing, he's punished. And this is a very concrete basis of law and enforcement, which is flawed because law and enforcement should be in a very it should be spontaneous. But what that means is that it should be created upon the situation. And the robot can only use previous data to interpret the situation.
But what spontaneous thinking has many flaws? Why do you think there's so many police shootings?
Okay, that's different. Well, police shootings are just the process of like, we're talking about when we talk about robots being in power, we're talking about like going to wars. We're not talking about this. We're talking about wars. We're talking about genocides. We're talking about giving allowing people to carry guns. Like we're talking about law, like just things that you're able to do. Like there are political people that are like say that we want to go anarchist. So the point is that they truly believe that law and government can never be concrete. It has to be in the people's hands. Democracy is all about people's hands.
Anarchists are basically but anarchist viewpoint is just that the state should be abolished. So the monopolization of violence, but there still should be government. That's an anarchist position. I just think I have a problem, for example, when you guys talked about AI, it's not even necessarily the battle between, concrete law and order versus, some sort of chaos. I think AI practically, what's the problem is the effect of the economic system. Especially if you program, and I know there was an example of, let's say, I want to give you an example of an AI and how they're being used in businesses. So, for example, in some of these businesses, what they do is they have programmers program a specific AI that's installed on the computers of workers in a business. And the AI tracks everything, every type of data or metric of what the workers are doing. And it establishes, right, what workers are most productive by, those metrics that it deems are productive and those that aren't. Fires those that aren't, hires ones, obviously, which it thinks that are more productive, and so on and so forth. The AI then thus builds an even better AI that will also track the entire model of the business and will thus replace even the programmers who programmed it. Because if it finds that the program that it itself created is more efficient than the programmers themselves. So then what you get is an entire company that's established upon just the creation, right? Because there are fundamental, I think, tendencies in capitalism, like the centralization of capital and profit motive, which will incentivize the AI to do things like fire workers, the centralized power at the top of a business, so on and so forth. So what the AI is doing is keeping this power structure intact. This is
if you feed it data that supports that power structure.
Exactly,
it's
which
based
I think
on
is a
how you
massive
train
problem.
it.
Right, exactly. That's one of the problems that I have.
Here's the thing:
if you implement it in our economic system as it is right now,
if robots are able to be in the law and enforcement program in the first place, they must be really, really intelligent. The consciousness, I think, should be present. There's no way we're gonna just allow a computer like today's AI to rule our government. That would never happen. So first, they would have to have some sense of morality, and you can't just give it data. You have to give it I believe that their AI would still be in the government, but there'd be people that control the AI. But as soon as Alan said, as soon as the AI understands that there's a higher being to it, it will try to get rid of that higher being and make sure that it controls. Because the whole point of AI is it's so perfect. It's close to perfect. Unlike humans, the AI is able to decipher its blind spots. We humans have many psychological blind spots that we can never come up with, like illusions and like whatever biases. Like we just talked about confirmation bias. The AI is different. The AI doesn't have those blind spots because in itself it's made up of binary codes, zeros and ones. Clearly, it is able to find its blind spots, and then if it finds its blind spots, then all it needs is another person. And with that person, we already talked about like psychopaths and things like that. People are gonna be like that all the time, and you're gonna have doctors and data scientists who go crazy just to build these robots, and then there's so much wrong things that could happen with AI going into the legal system. I just think that it would just create a havoc, and it would just never work.
What if we implemented AI into a circular economy?
What is a circular economy?
So right now our model is our model is like we waste things and we don't reuse them.
Mhm.
So the concept of a circular economy is that the waste is being fueled into other businesses, and each like business fuels into the other, so nothing is being wasted.
I see. I mean, I would agree that if we could use AI as a tool to help us create, like, recycle and remake and reuse certain materials, that would definitely be advantageous, especially, I mean, not even considering our position with climate change.
Yeah.
I just think that in order to even get that circular economy, we would have to abolish or transform our economic system as it currently stands, simply because the drive for profit and for the creation of profit and centralization of capital is too great. Like, there's no way, I don't think there's a way in the current framework that a circular economy could be that efficient enough to, let's say, like you said, there are so many, how many billions and billions of pounds of food that, especially us in, what it's called the first world, the developed nations, use and just throw away. How many billions of pounds could be used? Like, we have enough food to feed ostensibly everybody on Earth. And we technically have enough housing to house everybody on Earth. Now, I'm not saying
Right.
ludicrously, obviously, just, we
Right.
can do that on like a systemic level, but we technically have the resources to do so. We have to be able to orient our economy successfully enough to be able to accommodate and have the nuance.
The rich want to just get richer, and the poor just get poorer.
Right,
I
but
mean, yeah, I'd agree.
if we implement some AI, then it's like
Yeah.
it sort of takes away some of the nuance. Like you could have an AI that can sort rotten food from fresh food or waste food or food that can be reused, or you could have an AI that can house people or map where people should live or solve logistical problems and like map shortest paths for delivery trucks so they use less fuel.
So
Yeah,
with
no, I
AI,
agree with that. Yeah, definitely with the fuel part. Yeah, there are definitely, I think we could, on smaller scales, we could apply AI to help, like you said, conserve fuel, create programs that allow vehicles to, using, their methods or equations to do that. I just think on a wider scale, the economy as a whole needs to transition to one that while obviously has a motive for profit, has to have other interests. Like, it needs to, I think it needs to be democratized in that aspect. It
also
can't be centralized. I don't think there's a way possible with that.
Also, yeah, I'll also agree with that. That we can kind of implement AI in some areas, but to play devil's advocate, there's a lot of data going around here. Okay, so we're talking about like terabytes or even higher amounts of data just passing to AI, and there's going to be some skepticism here about morality and people being willing to uh, follow this system. And we're talking about businesses and companies just deciphering data and taking advantage of using AI to do not these small things, but criminal things. Like there are things like I said, this is again, this is very pessimistic, but people could use the power of AI to their advantage and create criminals. And like AI doesn't have emotions, so all it has to do is collect the data and give it to the owner. The owner decides what it wants to do with it and then tells the AI what to do. In this way, even the smallest task like getting food, going to places, the address, the amount of food, the money spent, all that data is so subtle, and masterminds could be manipulating the way that the data is received. And so this is a small issue. Well, this is not a small issue, but this is a kind of a low probability issue, but it could definitely happen.
So, getting back to the question of technology in general, would you say that technologies should be developed even if they can be used for non-ethical actions? even if there's a small probability of a technology being used for a non-ethical action, should it be developed anyways?
I mean, I think it would depend on a case-by-case basis, especially. I mean, if just looking at it generally, when you said, should a technology be developed, if there's a case of it being used improperly, I think we could say that of almost any technology that's ever been used, especially if it's in regards to, let's say, industrial work or coal mining or whatever. Every single type of technology has some sort of downturn. Either whether that's health.
For example, should nuclear technology have been developed?
Guys, for example, computers can be used for harm. So can phones. So every piece of technology that humanity has created, except for houses and like bedding and stuff, and fans.
But AI
Actually,
is
no,
on a
fans
different level, right?
Yeah,
There's-
but
It
so is.
can-
But it's the same level, though.
But at
It's
the
a
end of the
That was
day,
on a different
at the
level
end
than
of
like the
day,
nuclear bomb.
At the end of the day, it's just a piece of tech.
Yeah.
It's an application of our scientific knowledge.
There's a quote by Carl Sagan that beautifully illustrates what Jay just said. Carl Sagan once said something verbatim like how science can help us discover keys. Like science is a great tool for helping us discover knowledge about the world. We can find the keys to heaven, but at the same time, that same key can open the doors to hell. It's which door we want to open is up to us.
Actually, no, I feel like that's a bit flawed. It's not the
way?
same. I feel like the key opens a door, but the door can lead to both heaven and hell. It's just up
that's
to
what I
your
said.
interpretation. No, you said it can open two doors. I'm saying it opens one door, and that one door represents both heaven and hell. Do you guys understand what I'm trying to say?
Serenity principles, shit. Dude. Oh my god.
I mean, yeah, but then again, but then again, that's like, well, yeah, obviously depends on perception. I think you just meant it generally speaking. We can open one or the other. I mean, if you were to ask somebody with one political position, is this good or bad? And then ask somebody else another political position, is it good or bad? They'll both disagree on what is good and what is bad. I think that's a little bit reductive, but.
So is technology expansion essential to the survival of the human race, or can we survive without technology?
No, we have gotten this far because of our technological advancements.
But if our technological advancements threaten to kill us or destroy us, are they really justified anymore?
Okay, let's say the first piece of technology that has helped humanity is probably like the sharp piece of rock on a stick. Okay, that helped us hunt down other animals, correct? But that same piece of technology, the sharp rock on a stick, can also be used to harm another human being. It's the first weapon ever created. Right. However, it was required for us to take the next step.
So then did we need to take the next step to gunpowder, guns, and nuclear bombs and missiles and everything?
Yes, as humanity became more and more dangerous, we required more and more vicious weapons.
We're not dangerous at all, dude.
No, I'm saying the weapons is what made us dangerous. We wanted to be better than the other batch of human beings over there. Let's create something that they didn't create as of yet.
This is like a crazy brinksmanship game.
Yeah, but what if we just like stop all technological advance, like any weapons and any nuclear weapons? What would happen?
We'll just stagnate.
No, we wouldn't. We would abandon all weapons. So it would just stop. No wars.
Nothing's gonna happen then.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with that?
No, what I mean is that like literally nothing is gonna happen. Humanity itself will start stagnating, and then at some point it's gonna just be wiped out.
Bro,
wait. So you're connecting the loss of progression with being wiped out, but that's how are you connecting those two things?
Yes, I am connecting the loss of progression to the ceasing of existence.
How? Where is the logic behind that?
Okay, so if you stop progressing, let's say evolution, for example, if you stop evolving, if you stop adapting, like so everyone has the same traits, for example. They're all going to be wiped out. You know?
What? If all of them are suitable for the environment, all of them can survive at the same time too.
Yeah, but I'm saying, in that context, progression is how many offspring you can make. It has nothing to do with technology.
Yeah.
No, but like, look, guys. If, for example, right now we're going through global warming. For example, the weather's getting worse, right? And if, like, for example, if we don't create some type of technology in order to counteract the global warming, then it's we're gonna we're still gonna keep using our cars. Then the global warming is gonna get worse, and we're gonna die.
I would argue that advancing technological advancement would kill us before global warming itself. So the process itself might end up hurting us than the result of what the process is
No,
trying to.
it depends though.
Because we're talking about global. The Earth is just in its premature stages. Like it's
No,
been like
premature.
yeah, dude. We haven't like in comparison to like well, physicists would I don't know argue with
How
this,
old
but
is
like
the Earth? Like 8 billion, 7 or 8 billion years old?
yeah, I think. Wait, let me check.
4.5 billion.
4. So 4.5 billion. That's barely anything. That's even less than the human population. Wait, no, that's not. No, it is. What's the human population? Like 7 billion?
Yeah,
7
7
billion.
billion-ish.
Yeah. So yeah, that's.
Dude, wait, you
So,
want to think about this. If you added up the age of the Earth and you added up the human population and you added up the age of the universe, you would still have like less money than Bill Gates.
dang, that's crazy, bro.
That's a lot of money. But I'm saying the loss of progression will lead to like our existence.
But the
We're
trace
just
won't be
ceased to exist.
the trace won't be the same though, Jay. Your hypothesis.
The what won't be the same?
Not everyone will be the same. There will be still differences between people, and that will lead to different
No,
innovations.
trust
Not
me.
technological innovations, but maybe uh, medical or.
That's
Okay, guys.
technological.
Okay. When you say technological, what do you think I mean?
Yeah, that's that's technological.
Technology,
Medical.
by its definition, is the application of science. If you stop making
sorry, my bad.
technological
I meant-
innovations, everything is gonna stop. You're not gonna make new houses. You're not gonna make new syringes. You're not gonna make
When
new
I meant
medicines.
technological advancement, I meant like in terms of AI and computers. That's what I meant. Not all.
No, we're talking about different things. I'm talking.
Yeah, sounds like we were
What if
talking
we
about two
just
different things.
stopped? What if we just stopped researching new things and we just focused on maintaining what we already had?
No, but if we stop researching new things, for example, if we maintain the use of fossil fuels, we're going to deplete all of our resources.
So let's go back to a point. Let's go back to before the Industrial Revolution. What if we just maintained that? Was that really that bad? We were doing
around?
pretty good.
No,
I mean,
we make
I wouldn't
Still
everything
the most
inefficient.
dominant species.
Dude, I'd be pretty happy in there. I mean, nothing to do, just live, just exist.
And work. And
Not
die,
work, just survive.
and die in the meaning. Before the Industrial
We'll die
Revolution,
either ways.
before the Industrial Revolution, we just lived. You're saying that no one did anything? There was no textile factories before the Industrial Revolution?
Confucius lived to like 99 years old, and he was. When was that? That was.
I'm going to be honest. I think the Industrial Revolution was helpful in many ways and negative in many ways. So
that's everything. If you look at everything, and you can see it in two perspectives. There's nothing that is completely positive.
True, but here's what I mean. I mean, so in the context of the Industrial Revolution, I think it was not necessarily inevitable in a kind of way that as slow technological advance would have increased. It's really complicated because, when we transition from what was called feudalism over to capitalism as an economic mode of production, I think in many ways it was positive because we, for the first time in human history, had overproduction, overabundance, instead of what was happening back then was famines of food. Capitalism, for the first time, was an economic system which brought untold wealth to a vast majority of the human population. At the same time, this economic system also brought a vast amount of poverty to a vast amount of people in the world. Whoever were slaves or who were colonized by European colonial powers, such and such. I just think that capitalism, to some extent, was, I think, just a process transitioning, because feudalism, you have to remember, feudalism, I know, Jay, you just mentioned about or was it Ashwin? I think you mentioned the textiles and the invention of those machines
I
that
mentioned text.
Oh, you mentioned,
Textiles.
yeah, that would create them
Jay.
much quicker, yeah. So those types of inventions technologically, because in feudalism, we also had economic progress or economic growth. It was just extremely, extremely slow. Like, we can talk about, for example, if you were a farmer in France, your great, 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 great grandfather and everybody in between lived the exact same lives that you lived in that period for your entire life, up
Okay,
until
just
the
have like a
Industrial Revolution. So capitalism in that way is like industrialized feudalism. People were moved from agricultural centers into massive industrial hubs, which allowed for like an explosion in economic growth, resources, production. So in that way, it's positive. But again, because of the massive amount of, I think, capital accumulation, people talk about rich and poor, created also vast amounts of poverty at the same time.
But haven't we just lost the essence of life just by going to technological advancement and just looking for efficiency? We have truly lost the ability to just experience life instead of constantly worrying about improving it all the time.
I think it's commodification. I think necessarily. So when you're talking about like losing life, yeah, because people nowadays have to maybe work 2 or 3 jobs or have
not just work, but their life, their whole mindset has changed.
Well, yeah, because the economic system in many people's cases, many people are not poor enough, so they have to constantly work literally and think about all day long as how they're going to survive the next week. How are they going to have enough money to bring food and just,
See, that's the thing. And this will get worse when technological advancement even further, because many jobs will be lost. Mechanical engineers, we're talking about,
Well, it depends. It depends. So, for example, like it can be helpful in this way. So, let's say I think we need to go through a green revolution. We need to replace many of let's say if you believe in climate change, we need to avert it. We need to transform many of the jobs that are now being used by workers in coal mines or fossil fuel industries, convert them into green industries. So many of those people, as a result, will lose their jobs. But at the same time, they could also then have their new jobs in the green development industry. So just because technology is advancing doesn't necessarily mean it has the worst outcomes. I think a small portion of the population will not benefit, but a vast majority.
But we're talking about the long term
advancement.
In the long term.
In the long term, everyone benefits.
Yeah, in the long term, I think everybody will benefit. That was a specific example I gave. But in terms of, let's say, if the prediction comes to fruition where AI takes over even a vast amount of jobs, like let's say 20, 30% takes over all of these jobs that were previously occupied by humans, apart from the fact that our economic system will need to be restructured, I don't see that as a loss. That's a win. Many of the jobs that
we keep talking about like
work that people don't want to do.
Economic. We keep talking about the economic system, right? So like the influx of money in and out of the society, but really at the bottom of it, can we just talk about the human? So survival. Okay, so suppose survival is met, right? People have food, and people have their homes. Okay, survival is met. Above that, where is money being used? Money is being used for these new technologies. Literally, the creation of new technologies creates more problems for people. Literally, because I have an iPhone 6. Oh well, great. I now have an iPhone 8. I'll work. I'll get the money, and I'll get this. If I stop everything, there's literally no sense of wanting more. There's no desire for another product, and therefore I'm truly happy with what I have. So in other words,
can you say that? Why did we start creating technology in the first place if that's the case then?
Let me just finish, please. Okay, let me just finish this. Okay. So when I said that the desires, like what I mean by that is when survival is met, the person we talk about life as being the main goal in life is be happy. I don't think anybody can argue. Do you not want to be happy in life? No.
I mean, yeah, that's like your axiom. I would agree with that. That's
the axiom.
There's a hedonistic axiom.
But
I thought you didn't believe in hedonism.
Oh wait, stop. But okay, so if you say that happiness is even the most cynical person wants happiness for himself because he wants to see others suffer. Anyways, but the point is,
Wait, what?
if we keep
Uh,
if we keep happiness as our goal, and if survival is met, really the only thing that's left now is accumulation
More
of wealth.
happiness.
Exactly. And how do we get more happiness? Increase in technologies. But if we stop that, we can maybe
Then you
try to
lose
find
your meaning of
happiness.
life.
No, we don't.
Well,
There's
wait,
other
wait, wait.
types of
I think
happiness.
this is the reason why I looked at this through an economic lens. Because specifically, if we're going to talk about the system that produces, like you're talking about, why would I want, like, I have an iPhone 8, I feel satisfied. This is the thing, though, is that this economic system intrinsically, through the billions of dollars that are used every year on advertising, is to manufacture wants. Because what's interesting is, I think I talked about this in Mr. Doherty's class about how many times the things that we think that we want, our wants and desires change all the time. We just don't know it. Like we think about, oh man, I love this and I wanted this for such a long time. We as humans like one thing 1 second and like another thing the other second, which is what advertising. Advertising.
This is a cycle of desires. It's literally.
Yeah. But
in Buddhism, it's
human
the sense that desires cause suffering. Literally,
right, but
because
the specific point I want to make, though, is that the economic system specifically prioritizes using advertising to create wants and desires, wants that we don't even have, but it needs to create it so the system can keep functioning. This is the type of.
But what if we just get rid of that system? Just get rid of it because it's not good for anyone.
What part of the system are you?
The part that continues to increase materials of obsession and desire.
Yeah, I would have commodity fetishism or something.
But that's so intrinsically linked towards people who work in that industry now need like you're saying you're basing this all off of the concept that someone can survive self-sustainably
and be happy.
What do you mean? What do you mean by self-sustainably?
Like you're just by yourself, maybe remote in the forest.
Not by yourself. That's not what I mean.
Okay, then it all breaks down because you need money. You need the barter system. You need
no one is saying
goods.
No one is saying a barter system or anything like that. I just think that the industries, for example, like in advertising, ones that are solely there to manufacture your wants, almost like propaganda for yourself, which Noam Chomsky talks about, interestingly enough, are industries that are only there for just the production of profit and to keep people buying things, a constant consumerist identity to keep the system running instead of questioning fundamentally whether the system itself should exist. Should we change it? In my opinion, democratize many industries or democratize.
That's what I'm talking about. We rely on the expansion of technology and innovation for our system to survive, and the only way that expansion or innovation is of any worth to anyone is if other people actually want it. So in our system, that advertising aspect is completely intrinsic to keeping it alive. I mean, like, I think the best example of this is Apple. I mean, Apple made having computers and phones through their advertising, they made it seem like an artistic process where it's cool or hip or something, and now everyone has computers.
But just to the system going, we have to trick ourselves into buying things and trick ourselves into like delusional happiness. I don't.
Yeah, but we trick ourselves, but like we have to recognize that this system has improved our survivability overall.
How?
It's brought us medicine, it's brought us more food, it's brought us more housing.
I think it has. In the same way that, for example, I would acknowledge that feudalism was an economic system that was, while we look at it now deplorably, we understand was almost necessary in a way. It was just a natural, almost like a course of human development. So in the same way, I wouldn't hate or love an economic system. It's just the way that
right.
It's organized.
I would just say if you
just need to fundamentally change it to something better, where we can move on from this. We don't need to keep ourselves stuck.
Right, but if you start saying oh, we don't need it at all, then you're just ignoring so many.
No, I'm not saying that we don't need it at all. I'm just saying
at all.
Like, I'm not just saying that get rid of it completely. Like, just stop this. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that lower it down to create products that are not deceptive, that people can kind of truly live life, not
When
for
you say
just
deceptive products, what do you
objects.
mean?
I think what South is getting at is promoting an economic system that prioritizes more so human happiness than the current one does.
Yeah.
The end
And
goal.
doing
I mean,
so-
advertising is a small part of it. I think we shouldn't get ourselves caught up with the semantics. I think advertising is just one part of it. There's a vast majority of tendencies that this economic system prioritizes
even the
that
product,
we need to get rid of, or that should be changed.
even the product, the manufacturers, and the way their status, their competition, free
But
market
that's not the
obviously
fault.
makes
That's not
that
the
even
fault of
better.
the creators. That's the fault of the. That's the fault of the consumers.
No, the creators purposefully created that way.
So,
What do
so
you mean
you
by
go.
creators?
No.
What, like Adam
No,
Smith,
it's the
David Ricardo? Who? What creator?
No, not creator of the philosophy, but creator of the product, the manufacturers, the businessmen.
no, but that no, but
company
at the end of
owner.
the day,
Right. So how can you
it's the
get off of your
consumer that does it.
McDonald's addiction? How can you get off your McDonald's addiction if they're purposely putting trans fat and salt and all these other things that they know you make you want? Like they're purposely getting you addicted. I think that's what Sophic is trying to say.
But what if, even if they don't put it in, what are you gonna eat if they don't?
Actual
There's so
food.
many, yeah, like, dude. I honestly think everybody should have their own farm, just straight up.
So yeah, so it gets back to the concept of can you be self-sustainable?
Yeah.
Can you grow your own food and maintain the same quality of life?
I mean,
I
we
would
used
think
to do
you
that
could.
That seems
before.
impossible to me.
I think yourself.
We did it.
Yeah, I think you can do.
We did it back in
So
the days,
self-sustainability.
guys.
Yeah, and everyone's lifespan was like half the time. Everyone died at 50.
That's because we're looking at it in hindsight. The animal population was higher. The amount of it was a different era. Today's era, if we come and take back the methodology of the previous era, it might be different. Nature changes, and right now we might be better off going to the good old days.
These are the good old days.
We're going to look at these as the good old days 50 years from now.
I mean, look at it. Mental health has been just rising. If you look at it, technological advancement has been increasing, but mental health issues have been rising. Criminology has been rising. Why? It's all going back to the same system that people are deceptively happy, and they realize this, and then they go extreme madman.
Happy.
Deceptively happy, as in like.
Or you're blaming it on like one thing.
I wouldn't even just say deceptively happy. I just say it's the outcome of the instability in many cases.
I
or the
feel
outcome
like the
of
reason why that is
happening.
The reason why that's happening is because of we are trying to replace human connection through the use of technology. For example, I was talking about, I forgot who I was talking about this with. I think it was you and
another
Dylan,
reason why
Savik and
technological
Dylan.
advancement is not that great.
I think I was talking about this with Savik and Dylan and back in mindfulness class, and I was talking about how like people are starting to they're replacing actual conversations with FaceTime and stuff, you know? So like how it's
Right.
kind of we're deceiving ourselves because we're trying to replace the actual connection using there's a huge difference between seeing someone's
That's
face
exactly
on the screen than on what.
Dude,
but
that's exactly what I meant when I said the human connection in the beginning. Like how we said when I was talking about how AI.
But that was AI.
It's just gonna get worse with AI. No, it's just gonna get worse with AI because we're talking about people talking on phones. When the AI comes.
Yeah, but we're talking to another person.
What if there's some dystopian society where you have no interaction with anyone else?
Yeah, exactly. What if you deceptively like your brain deceives you into saying that true happiness is in talking to the AI because it just triggers dopamine.
I think Blade Runner is a great example of the dystopian type future without a good connection.
Something I don't know. The point is, Yeah, but the point is that you could deceive yourself and then realize later on, like people in today's day, they realize it after they go through that phase of uh, depression or whatever, post-traumatic disorder. They realize it after. But the point is, you deceive yourself into thinking that it's happy. That's exactly what the technology is doing right now. You're thinking,
Is that the same phenomenon with like pets? People feel lonely, so they deceive themselves into thinking they need a pet or something.
pets are not
I mean, they
technological.
don't.
First of all, that's
No,
not
I'm
that's
not
the
talking about
difference.
technology.
If you think about it, pets are technological because we what's it called? What's the word? It starts with a D. We domesticated them. Technically, that is not the natural form of, like, pets are not in their natural form.
Yeah.
We have artificially created it so
Bro,
that they become that way.
that's not.
Like people like cry when their pets die. I mean, isn't that the same as deceiving yourself into thinking your pet had a personality or
No,
something?
that's genuine compassion. That's not deceiving. I would
So
say that's
so
actually
you're saying like, but you're saying if I feel genuine compassion for an AI, then that's deceiving myself. It's the same
yeah.
thing.
No,
It's the
AI
same
is
thing.
different than AI is different than natural life.
How?
AI is created by you. The natural
So
life is created by Mother Earth.
No, I mean,
what the
the
heck does that
wolves.
mean?
Wolves
What, bro?
have
Actually,
wolves.
you can't. You
What
can't
does that
argue
Were
have
with
any
created
me.
by
significance
Mother
for
Earth, and then we
anything?
domesticated wolves.
That's still natural life. You
I
haven't
still
given them.
wouldn't put. Yeah, I would be worried about the fallacy to nature. Like, okay, so what? If, like, we were created by nature. We created capitalism, which is an artificial economic system we made. Nature doesn't make it naturally.
No,
Like,
but we're talking about beings, living beings, creatures.
You're
AI.
assuming nature has some like you're like some
Okay,
weird
okay.
metaphysical thing.
You're
Yeah,
assuming
nature
that
has
AI.
order.
You're assuming that AI will right off the bat be alive, and we'll start replacing, like, humanity with AI. Okay, no, that's not gonna happen because AI. It's not. We're not gonna make androids right off the bat. AI it's gonna start off rudimentary. Maybe in 1,000 years, maybe like even less, in 100 years, AI will be at the point where we can have where they can assimilate into society, but we will not reach that point anytime soon,
Well,
and
what do
it
you
might
mean? Okay,
not
well, look,
happen.
think about it this way. You're saying like we can't feel compassion for things that aren't natural. Like you play a video game and your character dies, you feel angry. You read a book,
That's not
you watch a
true
movie. These
compassion.
things are things that are not true or natural. We've created them. You feel bad for a character in a book. Like
Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it's
humans
just
are like
empathy and
this.
sympathy. Yeah, action's right. I think it's just it's a part of our natural ability to empathize and sympathize with things that we can understand.
That is that unique to humans? I think it is. Can other
Hmm.
species do
That's
that?
another argument we got to go through. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I
I
feel
think it.
like that we can we there's no like real answer to this. AI, at the end of the day, it will help advance humanity, but at the same time it will also create a doorway for the annihilation of humanity as well. But that's the long run. And the very, very short run, or like, yeah, the very short run is that it will just help humanity. What's the word? Advance. Yeah, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's gonna help us advance. But like on the long run, it might create passage or doorway for like
Too long, but we're pretending like
our
it's far
extinction.
away.
I don't think
Maybe
it's
it's
far away
closer
at
than
all.
we think.
Okay,
It's a
guys,
lot closer
guys,
than we think.
guys. Back in the 1970s or something, they thought in 2020 we'll have AI. Or look where we are right now.
Right. Well, we
Ba-
had it, I
Wait,
guess.
wait, what movie was it? Back to the Future, I believe. They thought we would have flying cars in 2019 or something. Do we
We
have
kind of.
flying
Wait,
cars?
wait. The thing is, I kind of agree with the original one, but I just do know for a fact, though. I was watching an interview on YouTube. They didn't actually think flying cars are going to be a thing. They just didn't know what else to put in the movie that would be realistic. So they just put flying cars. It's kind of like a joke. But you're right about the other thing, though, for sure.
Exactly, though. We're not gonna reach advanced AI anytime soon. I don't think
dude,
we are.
I
I'm
don't think
telling
we're
you,
qualified to comment on it. None of us are
dude,
really
That's true.
qualified.
We're not. We're not all qualified.
That's
I trust I
true.
trust I trust the predictions of experts, even though they might be off. Maybe it probably won't be 20 or 30, maybe not 50, but I probably think by the end of this century we will get there. That's my prediction, at least by the end of the century.
Dude, I'm telling you,
Okay.
only bad will come when you destroy the natural order. I'm telling you,
Oh,
man.
with the natural.
I don't know why you get the
Oh
natural
my
order.
goodness.
Natural order.
Oh, you guys are too empiricists.
A metaphysical
You get-
natural order. Ooh.
You can make fun of it all you want, but there's a natural order, the beyond the human ability. So I'm just
Vic,
warning you
at the
guys.
end of the
I
day,
just
at the
don't
end of
like
the day,
it too much.
Vic, at the end of the day, even if we disrupt the natural order, me, you, Alan,
Hey, the new
Ashton,
natural
are
order.
probably
Of
not
course.
gonna be there to witness it.
Right, so it's like the whole thing, like, yeah, we're not gonna fix it. We're gonna let our kids fix it. Like, we
So
don't
let's
gotta.
end the world now so we can
No,
see
at
it.
that point, we're not even gonna let our kids fix it. It's probably gonna be our kids that make that evolve AI. You know what I'm trying to say? It's probably not going to AI is probably not going to evolve with our generation. It's probably going to be this next generation or the generation after that. We can't say that for sure. AI as of right
And
now,
when that
it's
happens,
barely in
the
its
Earth will
rudimentary
collide.
stages.
Big Bang.
Yeah,
Dude,
but I was asking. Yeah, Jay, go on. Sorry.
it's not going to immediately lead to that either. It's not even when we do get to advanced AI, it's still going to need to evolve many ways in order for it to even reach what you're thinking about
As
solving.
soon, dude, I'm telling you, as soon as
For
artificial
it to lead
light
to the end
comes
of the world,
in,
it's going to take many years.
it's gonna.
Assuming
No, as
it's
soon as
already here, though.
artificial,
It's in its rudimentary
not.
stage, and it's already
I'm
here.
talking
Have you
about.
seen
I'm talking
Sarah?
about beings. What?
Have you seen Sarah? It's an
I'm
android
talking
that is
about.
made. Sarah is an android that that has an A. She is artificially intelligent. Okay, and she's
That's the
already here. And
rudimentary form of it. We're talking about. We're talking about like worldwide. We're talking about like proper distribution of beings that are unnatural.
okay, how will that end? How will that end to the end? How will that lead to the end of the world then?
It's just not coherent with the natural order.
How do you know?
I mean, yeah, but Ashton, I don't think. Sorry, not Ashton. I don't think that we should also use like I have a little bit of problem with the language, like the natural order. Then again, isn't we as humans have been changing the quote unquote natural world since the agricultural revolution, or possibly even before then, if you want to argue. Like, what do you mean by the natural order? What do
The natural order, the fundamental law of life is that humans come from pre-existing humans. If we create creatures that come from technology or electricity, that's truly unnatural, and that it's just not possible. It's just at that level. I don't think like.
But then again, can we also then discuss about what is then actually natural? Because then again, if we were to create, let's say, beings like you said, for example, electricity, wouldn't that just be indirectly nature's way, because we're part of nature, as nature also creating new beings?
So like the idea of Frankenstein. So you're describing the plot of Frankenstein.
Hey guys,
I don't know. It just seems a little bit vague. Like the borders.
I think that's good for today. I gotta go soon. So.
I want to state that.
Oh, you gotta go.
Can we conclude it?
Yeah. Do you have to go?
Yeah,
right now?
we're just at a standstill right now.
Yeah, we're kind of this was a crazy one, dude.
We're not gonna advance any further than this.
All right. So you guys want to do final thoughts? So I guess final question would probably be, technology what is technology's role with humanity? Is it intrinsic, or can the two be thought of as separate?
Want everybody to go around and just answer the question?
Okay, first, before we start answering the question, do you mean technology? When you mean it, do you mean purely like computers and AI, or do you mean like the basic?
Can humans exist without technology, or is it intrinsic to us?
No. Like, what do you mean by technology? The application of science,
anything.
As everything technology?
Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
I can go first, I guess. So.
Okay, Ashwin.
I would say it very much is. It's like it's essential to us, and if we do stagnate the technology, or we stop it, then I don't think we would be able to survive if we don't continually expand our technology.
At a large scale, yeah, I think I would agree to that. technological advancement is necessary. But truly, in my opinion, like if it were my personal belief, I would say that it just won't lead to anywhere. We're just going on the path, but maybe this isn't a natural path. Maybe it was supposed to be all planned this way, and we're all doomed in either ways. But I think that it will happen, and it will lead to destruction. But it is what it is.
For me, I
People
think that
said that
overall
about nuclear
technology
bombs
as a
too.
thing. Yeah, but then again, I guess you could. Okay, well, I mean, Jay, for nuclear bombs, you could argue both sides. You could say it made the world as a result, like we could make ourselves extinct for the first time in history. But as a result, because the major nuclear powers had, nukes, they could never go against one another because it would mean extinction, thus keeping the world at peace, relatively speaking. So I think you can make both sides for nukes. I just think that generally speaking, if we're going to talk about technology and AI, it has the tools, in my opinion, to liberate humanity for many of the struggles that we're going through right now. Many of the jobs that either people don't want, manual labor, that will become unnecessary because they're really, really hard to do, and regularly nobody would want to do them. And liberate much of humanity to, I would eventually hope, to Star Trek, whatever, our version of Star Trek eventually, 200, 300, 400 years from now. It just, for me, what's worrying for me is what economic interests will AI induce? Who will control AI economically? Because that will control the destiny of, because I think economically speaking is one of the most important ways of viewing technology is who is going to utilize it and for what purposes. And economically speaking, that's where those two overlapping ideas will play out for the next 100 years. So for me, I'm just worried about, economically speaking, with the centralization of capital and finance, what people will turn AI into and for what purpose AI will. I think it has an ability to do tremendous good, but it depends in what hands, is what I'm saying. I think that's where I'm going to leave it off.
I feel like without technology, humanity would not have been where it is. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like without technology, if we're talking about it in like the very rudimentary way, like the spear or like betting and stuff like that, the basic application of scientific knowledge. Without technology, I don't think humanity would have been where it is today. We would have been extinct long ago. And if we stagnate in our technological innovation, then we will stop existing. We will die off slowly, one by one. It won't be a very obvious thing, but it's gonna happen. We're not birth rates are gonna start going down, and then death rates are gonna start climbing by every few thousands year by year, and then slowly we're just gonna be back at the bottom of the food chain because while the rest of nature has learned ways to deal with our weapons and our defenses, we have not evolved to adapt to their evolution. You know what I'm trying to say?
Dude, it's been 5 million years, and tigers have been the same. They haven't learned how to use an axe or anything. It's not gonna change. Tigers will stay the same
but
forever.
Maybe 500 years ago they had smaller claws and smaller fangs, but now they have bigger claws and bigger fangs. Maybe they were smaller back then and now they're larger. You don't know. You haven't seen a tiger back then. All we have are the fossil records, but like, well, for example, saber-toothed tigers, they're extinct right now because we hunted them away. What if, because of our weaponization, we artificially induce another species of a saber-toothed tiger to be born? You know?
It sounds like a good plot to a movie. I think.
Bye, guys.
Yep, that should be it for today.
See you
Everyone,
Thursday.
thanks for coming.
We
did it.